Hey, Jay.
Hi, Natalie.
I would sing the good morning song to you, but it's afternoon, which means we are going to be extra punchy.
It is extra saucy, and I don't think you know an afternoon song.
No, well, actually, isn't there Afternoon Delight? What
No,
is
let's
that
not
one
sing
song
that
from the
one.
70s?
That's like a love song or something. I don't
Oh,
want to
that
hear
seems
that.
inappropriate. We immediately went downhill. Okay, I'm not
No.
going to sing Afternoon Delight. I'll have to think of something else. But our to Neal, who is our guest, by the way, which is
Yes, we have a guest.
awesome.
We have a
He's a
guest.
boy. Go
Let
ahead
me
and
do
sing
my
it.
voice.
Hi.
It's a boy.
We have a boy for the guest today. Like we recorded earlier and we had another boy. And it shows you that it's more common than people think of because people think of caregiving, Jay, as a female dominated role. And it has been. I mean, it's been built into the culture of our society for hundreds of years, honestly, hundreds and thousands of years, probably. I would have fallen into the hunter gatherer group. 250,000 years ago, I would have preferred to be the hunter gatherer because everybody knows I can't pull water. So my line would have passed out really down really fast. We're just gone. Okay. So
Let me get
I
started.
want you to talk about Neal and because Neal is going to be super fun. I can already feel it.
Absolutely, because he showed up in scrubs.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, you got to watch the video,
the video
people.
is
Go to
worth it.
YouTube and watch this because Neal's wearing the outfit that every one of us want to wear every day. Scrub.
Absolutely. So let me introduce you guys. We are honored, absolutely, to have Neal Shah with us today. He has an incredibly impressive background, but his best title, he is a CEO, but he's America's Chief Elder Officer.
I'm not going to lie to you. Freaking love that.
Yeah,
like I'm the Chief Energy Officer. The fact that I found the Elder Officer, dig it.
Thank you.
Totally. His book, he has like the best titles. His book is titled Insured to Death: How Health Insurance Screws Over Americans and How We Take It Back. So I'm like, dude, he totally pegged it for me too. He helped care for his grandfather through multiple diagnoses and end of life. But he also cared for his wife through years of cancer and serious illness. Those events inspired him to leave his career and start a caregiving movement. I'm telling you guys, that is
I love that he was a quitter too. He was a big quitter and did something bigger.
I know. So Neal, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much. We follow you. You're like an icon. You're like LinkedIn. Like,
I honestly, if you don't follow Neal Shah on LinkedIn, you should, because just insightful, fantastic post. And I'm going to tell you, I feel smarter when I read things from him. So we'll make sure his information's in the show notes to get connected with him because he's doing all kinds of cool stuff. But all of this came about from his past experiences. And so now we need Neal to tell his story. So Neal, I always start from the beginning. You were born, but give us some background. Give us some background about your family and growing up and how care came into your life. But you got to give us some color so we know some things.
Yeah, sure. First of all, JJ and Natalie, thanks so much for having me. It's really an exciting opportunity. I guess where do I begin? I grew up like pretty humble beginnings. I was born in India. Actually, my family immigrated to the U.S. When I was a young child. And then grew up here under like pretty modest circumstances, as like oftentimes the life of immigrants is like starting over, so,
That's right.
Lived in like pretty lower income household through most of my childhood and all the way kind of through high school. Was like a pretty good like academic, student. So ended up going to university and getting some scholarships and, then graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. Initially started my career working in finance. I mainly just as a way to like repay some college loans and kind of like what's the fastest way I can earn income. Was like really good at it. Very quickly out of school, I went into investment banking in New York City. Was top of the class there and got recruited by a hedge fund. There I learned very quickly how to do turnarounds of troubled companies and invest in and find opportunities. Pretty quickly, over the course of 3 or 4 years, became a partner at a multi-billion-dollar fund where I was running the entire restructuring and kind of turnaround portfolio. And then I just happened to kind of catch a lucky break in my career where 2008, 2009 financial crisis happened. And I was the only person at the firm that knew how to like do bankruptcies and turnarounds. So I ended up getting allocated a lot of the firm's capital to investments that I was finding. and
How
had
old
a
were you at that time? I have to jump in.
27.
He was
I was
12.
going to say, because you're
He
young.
was 12.
Yeah,
I mean, Neal's
I'm in my early
right
40s now. Yeah, I was 27 at the time, so it was like massive like career break. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was like good and I was working hard, but sometimes you just get lucky, like right place, right time. And so I generated a lot of returns for the fund. And as a result of that, at 31, when I was 31, one of the investors approached me to start my own investment organization. So I started that.
Wait. You're going way too fast though, Neal.
Okay.
You skipped over like the fundamentals of where you get like this passion. Like, I want to go back to from childhood.
Want to go personal?
I need to know if you got siblings. I need to know. Oh no, I don't care about work. I need to know about like, tell me where this heart for care and serve came from. And to me, I think we started with like, my parents were immigrants. We came to the United States. Like, I need to know where you're from. If you have any siblings, tell me about childhood and family values and things, because I think so much of caregiving comes from our past experiences.
Thank you.
Good or bad. And so, because it shows your heart, my friend, not just your brains.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And I always tend to kind of like lead with that stuff, but you're right. Like, I think in like, thinking about like how, who am I? Like, I'm a combination of my mother and my father, and they're quite different personalities, and like they're like, it's very symbiotic. But, I learned a lot of my analytical mindset from my dad, who's like a very analytically oriented person. And I learned a lot of care from my mom, and both of whom I'm like very close to and spent a lot of time with in my childhood, and also my grandparents. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and they all have like different personalities, but I'd say I learned a lot of care and empathy. Actually, interestingly enough, like I'm like a pretty spiritual person, and I do like believe in like a greater power, and sometimes I believe in like destiny and fate. And one of the things that's been reinforced to me since I was born and since my childhood, and I was like born into like pretty modest circumstances, is my mother like always like had like this prophecy that she instilled in me, that you are going to like do something for the family, and you're going to be like financially successful at a very young age. Like, you will be smart and capable, but you will experience crisis and kind of a change of your mindset in the middle of your life to then direct the rest of your life towards like significant humanitarian work. And it's like really interesting, because this was like reinforced into me since as early as I can remember, like this is like a prophecy,
amazing. That is okay. Your mom is cool. Like, I mean, I feel like I need to go get near her so she can be like, nah, you're on the right path. I mean, I don't know you well, but I'm feeling your vibes. I think to be able to say, to have that kind of encouragement, and you being able to pull, are you an only child?
No, I have a younger sister.
Okay, so you're the oldest. I just need to, JJ and I love to be like, what's your birth order?
What's your birth order?
JJ clearly looks to be the oldest. I mean, she got the most wrinkles. She does not.
That was rough. She always throws out, I'm the oldest, and Natalie is the middle, and we have a younger sister. So there's three of us. So,
and hold on a second, Eugene. JJ broke up really bad, and I'm having a hard time. I couldn't even hear. Jay, can you start that again? Say Natalie is the middle. Start that again, please. I couldn't even hear what you were saying.
Okay, so I'm the oldest, and Natalie is the middle, and then we have a younger sister. So there's three of us.
Yes, and I am yellow mustard, Neal. I feel like, JJ, you need to understand, if you've watched the videos, JJ's Grey Poupon. I am yellow mustard, and Emily's the baby. Emily's just the baby, and there is doing no wrong. So, what's the age difference between you and your sister?
3 years. 3 years.
I love that. Okay, we're all.
And you're right. Like, I think birth order matters a lot. It matters a lot in like the upbringing. Like, sometimes the eldest like has a lot of the pressure of kind of the family in a way, and then like maybe the younger one, it maybe is treated a little bit more with kid gloves in a way. So I've kind of observed that, there's good and bad of all. But so that's it. That's our like core families. Like, it's mom and dad and younger sister.
Would you say culturally, because I think this is important, do you think culturally care was a priority? Something that your family talked about? Was there any kind of assumption? Like, of course, because you mentioned you were with your grandparents a lot, which we were too. We grew up with our grandparents and all of our cousins, all of our people. And every Sunday went to church. Everybody got together. We all got fat together. It was great.
Yeah. I think that matters a lot. I think it matters a lot, culturally. And, like an interesting thing you said earlier, where you were talking about, like, you made the joke about hunter gatherer. So it's actually really interesting. Like, I've thought about this a lot and I've read about this a lot, that, human history was a lot more equitable in terms of like the roles of men and women. And if you study how hunter gatherer tribes operate, it's a lot more egalitarian. I think the division of the sexes is a agricultural thing, which is like the last few thousand years of human life, where roles were so significantly divided and how you work and who's responsible for what. But I think a lot of, like, when you study and read about like ancient hunter-gatherer societies, they were way more egalitarian. And some of that is still true today in many different cultures. There's actually a great book I read a few years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like a big feminist book in the 1980s called The Chalice and the Blade. And I would highly recommend it, if anyone hasn't read it. But it really made me like rethink history, because, nowadays it's almost like prevailing view that like there's different types of expectations. But in like studying ancient societies and their writings and, their imagery, there were way more egalitarian civilizations, thousands of years ago. And I think that's kind of something cool. So, and anyway, I'll pause there, but I have another thought on that.
No, I like that. I have another thought.
Yeah.
No, but I think culture plays a part. Our past experiences play such a significant part in who we are and what was modeled to us. And because we're talking about this, we've never really talked about this before, in the sense of, I'm a big fan. JJ knows I'm a big fan of Bruce Perry, and he is a psychiatrist, child and adolescent psychiatrist, but talked about how relationships work and how we learned from one another. And when we were in those hunter-gatherer groups, we lived in multi-generational households, and the children learned what their roles were at certain ages because they lived in multi-generational households. It was never really a question, because they modeled and they observed what they were supposed to do at every age. And I think, we've gotten away from that. Technology is a great thing, but it can also we've become a bit more disconnected from our families. And it sounds to me like you were really kind of close to your family growing up, which naturally would assume, I'm sure your parents weren't thinking, will Neal help care for us? Will Neal help, and your sister, will there be questions? And now people really do question, I wonder if my children will help care for me. And then there's this question of, should they?
And it goes both ways. It goes both ways too. It's like, I think the thing works when it's like, not that everybody's kind of calculating in a way, but it's kind of like implied, if like mutually beneficial, if like grandparents, parents, and children are spending a lot of time with each other, doing things for each other. So there's kind of like an implicit, return, right? And I think the more you kind of like break that down, which you're right, like that is one of the biggest like sadness of the way the modern society is set up. Like even now, like I live very close to my parents. Like I live 10 minutes drive away. I live 10 minutes from my sister. And like we're like very focused on like, I have a young daughter, my sister has 2 kids, and then like we see my mom and dad all the time. And it's like, you have to be very conscious about trying to create that, because modern society creates a lot of things of somebody gets a job here and they have to move, and somebody goes to school here, and then pretty soon like the family is like kind of broken apart. I think you have to be very conscious about that. So I think that's one of the perils of modern society.
So I know that one of your first experiences, or at least the one that we had talked about in your history, was you helped care for your grandfather as kind of an introduction. So you said you've got a daughter, you've got, of course, you got a spouse. Where does all of this fall? So when did you start taking care of your helping care?
Yes, this was, when I was younger, so now I'm in my early 40s. This was in my early 30s. And, actually, like my grandfather went through like a multi-year, kind of like decline process of, through dementia, through kidney failure, through cancer, and then end of life care. And really, like my family was doing a lot of the care, my mom primarily. And that was kind of like, I'm like the person in the family that everybody relies on for like research and care coordination, and just kind of like figure new things out, right?
Well,
I like research.
Think about it. That's your strength.
Yeah, that's my strength, right? I'm like an analytical person. I enjoy that. So, there I went through that whole journey. It was my first foray into like direct care. And actually, the biggest realization to me during that point was, because there's a perception that like, even when we were living in India, before we moved here, like American healthcare is awesome, which it is in many ways. But what you realize is that social care, which is like a massive component of healthcare, is really lacking. You know, so when you are in like, you know, and you guys may have heard this from dementia support groups or cancer support groups, but like, it's like one person doesn't get dementia, the family gets the diagnosis, you know, because it's like, okay, yeah, there's some medical stuff that can be done. You know, there's some therapeutics now. Back then, they weren't even that effective, right? Like nowadays, there's some that are moderately effective, but like much of it is like, what's the family going to do? You know, it's like home-based care is not really supported. Medicare doesn't cover anything. Like your private health insurance doesn't cover anything. What's the hospital going to do? You know, they're not going to keep somebody around all day, you know, keeping your mom or dad or your grandparents safe. So that entire thing falls on the family. And that was like my first foray into realizing the social care structure in America is like completely broken. Like it is out of reach and out of affordability for many people to get actual care help. Like whether it's resource navigation, whether it's just having a nice person to give you a break so you can kind of like go do your job. My mom was managing her career at that point. You know, I believe she was in her mid 50s at that time. And it was just like the amount of strain and responsibility was insane. And critically, the realization that we had through that experience is every time we try to get care support, it was so bad. It was like unreliable. It was high cost. It was really guilt ridden, you know, in terms of like you would leave somebody with him. And, you know, if you came back from work, you know, he's in the room asking for help or a glass of water and somebody's else goofing off in the other room, you know, kind of on their phone or watching TV. And, you know, I don't want to knock the care workers of America. You know, I believe there are very well-intentioned people who are doing great work in this field, and many people who do view it as a calling. But I think it's really the economic structure of the care industry that care work, which is some of the most important work in someone's life, right? Especially for the person who is receiving the care, is treated, and I have the same view on education too. It's some of the lowest paid work in the country, which is kind of that should be a damning of the society, you know, that this is how we value care for our, not just older population. This is how we value care for our children. This is how we value care for middle-aged people going through cancer and children with disabilities. These are some of the lowest paying jobs in the country. And that is like an absolute tragedy, because what happens when the job is low paying? It's not done well, or that person is super stressed out that they did a night shift last night doing something else, and then they're coming in during the day because they can't make ends meet. So it is really, I think the structure of the care system is so bad that you cannot blame the care workers. I think you have to blame the system.
No, and I think you're exactly right. We're over our time. I'm going to jump into a break because I want to jump back into this, because I think what we're doing is we're talking about direct care and your own experience, but we're also sprinkling in macro level issues. And when I say macro for our listeners, we're talking about system issues, the healthcare system, and why there's so much flaw. And when you're in the thick of it, you're trying to figure out, why is this so dang hard to navigate? Well, because the system is dysfunctional. It's not you, I promise. It's not you.
Thanks for bringing that up, because a lot of times I thought, what am I missing? Like I'm not researching it enough. I haven't found the right option. Maybe I'll do more work and find something else. A lot of times you feel very isolated, especially if it's your first rodeo going through care. You're just like, I must be doing something wrong. You know, why am I not finding good help?
Exactly, which never helps. But we will be right back.
I don't know about you, but my inbox is always cluttered with useless emails. But there's one I always open: the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver newsletter. You may say, Natalie, what makes yours so special? Well, I'm biased, but don't just take my word for it. Here's what our subscribers say they love. First, it comes once per month, and you can read it in under 5 minutes. Next, you'll find amazing tips and resources to use in your everyday life. And who doesn't love a recommendation? These sisters do, which is why we share sister-approved products and discount links to save you time and money. And of course, you're first to know about the upcoming month's confessions. Just like our show, you're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, to sign up for our newsletter today.
All right, everybody, we are back here with Neal Shah. And let me tell you something, we're on our soapbox. So I'm sorry, we're talking about some macro level issues, but also Neal mentioned something that really touched me. And the truth is that you always kind of feel like it's your fault. Like, what am I doing wrong? When actually it's some bigger issues. And you see that when you're a caregiver. So, and I know some of that stuff has really inspired you to get where you are today, to kind of I don't want to give the spoiler alert, but
yeah, no, let's
Yeah.
let's talk about the role. Let's talk about the first instance of care, because you've had
Sure.
multiple bouts and it changed actually the trajectory, like your mother
Yeah.
knew. This
Yeah.
goes back to your mother was right.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think let's talk about, like, this happens, your grandfather starts getting dementia, and what's the family conversation like? Let's get back into the
Sure.
personal and say, okay, how did we have this conversation? You're in your late 20s, early 30s at this point.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, and what had the planning been for that, for your grandparents and that sort of thing?
Planning close to minimal. Like, it's not like something you kind of, I mean, maybe some people plan for, but, kind of unexpectedly happens to you. The family conversation was, how are we going to manage the care, right? Like, in that case, like, everybody's working. My mom was working. So, it was like, okay, let's get care help. How do we keep him safe? At various times, how do we take him to dialysis appointments? Like, there was a lot of like coordination work, and we were trying to kind of patch it all together and suddenly learn all together about how do you get help, who do you hire, how do you vet, all that stuff. Full transparency, and part of the reason why I really am focused on why the system is broken. A lot of times we just thought we were just having bad luck, or we're doing it wrong, we're not getting good help. My mom ended up taking a lot of time off work, like just unexpectedly missing work here and there, then having to take breaks and take leave.
Oh, yeah.
And cut to the end. I mean, eventually she just left her career and did it full time herself because it was so bad. Which, like, we thought, okay, why is this happening? When you're in the situation, you don't think this must not be happening to everyone. Otherwise, everybody must be quitting their, work. So maybe we're just not figuring out where the good care is. So there was like a real toll on that. And then I would say the bigger thing from the whole observational experience was it put so much strain and pressure on my mom through the care journey that after he passed, I think there was a long period of PTSD, for her to recover from that because of just the combination of the sheer amount of work and the sheer amount of second guessing and guilt of like, could I have done XYZ things better?
Wow.
So I think that was like, I mean, obviously on me too, but I unfortunately didn't have a lot of time to think because shortly after that, my wife became severely ill, and then it's like directly hit me.
Oh, and when it hits you, it's weird because you mentioned in the information that you sent us, you were like, I was the secondary caregiver. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting that your mom was the primary. Is that, would you say that was between she and your dad? Like, well, let me reverse. Yeah. Is your grandfather maternal or it
was her dad?
Okay, so it was her dad, and so was it, and so then it would have been assumed like your dad, you're female, this is the natural role, and everybody just was like, okay, best supporting actress.
In that case, there's two siblings, like it's her and her older sister. Yeah, and I think it was assumed like just from a personality perspective, like my mom is like way more of the caring person. So it was kind of assumed that way, that like she would do it.
Oh, trust me, Neal, JJ and Emily are way more caring than me. Like I'm the fourth person out of three daughters my mom would probably ask for. And so, but I think this is important for our listeners to hear. Yeah. Just because you're the oldest doesn't mean you're automatically nominated to be the caregiver. Just because it really leans into a number of factors. But it's not as clean as a diagnostic, as a diagnosis. If you think about it, it's not that clean. So it's based on a number of factors. Where do you live? Who's got the personality? What's the relationship like? Can you even do it? I mean, if you really think about it. What were some of the roles, if you don't mind, before we go in to talk about your wife? Sure. What were some of the roles that you played being really a caregiver to the caregiver, but not only just to you supporting your grandfather, but even supporting your mom, how you and your sister?
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I would say actually in like reflecting on it, probably not as much of an emotional support role and more of like a outsourced helper or researcher role, because like, that's what I'm good at. I would say, based on my own personality, I was like, okay, what can I do given the skills and the, energy that I have? And what kind of things am I not good at, or like maybe less naturally good at? So I played a role of like, let me take tasks off your plate and help you figure things out because I like doing that and I'm good.
Well, and then
just
you'll
as
keep doing it
important.
again.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, you felt successful. If you really
Yeah.
think about it,
Yeah.
you felt successful in doing those pieces. And I can tell you, Neal, we are absolutely the same way.
Yeah.
JJ plays to her skill set. I
Yeah.
play to mine. Emily plays to hers. And
Yeah.
we're just fortunate. We always say we're fortunate that there's three of us, because we don't know
Yep.
how people do it with only one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think it's very hard. If you're doing this by yourself, it is extremely hard.
Even more with solo aging. So I don't have children. And so I'm trying to basically get as many children nearby that are my friends' kids to be like, hey, your Aunt Nattie's going to be really friendly when she's older. I mean, don't ignore the part now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you're right. Building a community. I think when you go through these kind of crises like that, it's like, the word community is often thrown around in our society as like a kind of a thing, but I think like that's really when it matters. Like, do you have a community around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your kind of like adopted family in terms of like your friends and people in your neighborhood and things like that, but like a strong community of like cohesive bonds, where people have done things for each other. I think it really matters when things like this happen. And I think it's like sometimes people cruise through life underappreciating the value of having a strong community, whether it's a community that they were, blood born into or that they created themselves. I think it's very important.
I completely agree. So let's go into, you notice, Neal, I do all the talking. JJ's just waiting for me to take a breath. But so you have this experience, and I appreciate you sharing that your mom would basically, what you shared is your mom struggled. She was the primary caregiver for your grandfather. And that you guys and she ultimately quit her job, which is unfortunate, which is so not uncommon. And I would assume, like you all, like so many of us, spend well more than the average, quote unquote, $7,000 a year in providing care, because your mom quitting her job alone just shows the income right there. And
I think that stuff is undercounted, people don't count that, the lost income, It's like the cost of caregiving is high.
Yeah. Exactly. So you have this experience, you're moving along at the same time in your career. So do you get married at some point? Like you're a whiz kid. Basically you're Doogie Howser of the finance. That's what I've decided. You're Doogie Howser of the finance. And so life's moving along. You get married, meet your wife.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yes. Got married. Yeah. Met my wife, got married. And, we were married for, I think, around less than 3 years at the time when she became severely ill and, went through breast cancer. It was triple negative, very fast growing K factor. Went through major series of health issues, including multiple hospitalizations, a lot of side effects from treatment, treatments that weren't working, multiple surgeries at like very early on, went through a severe hospitalization that landed her ultimately in the ICU in a medical coma for 3 weeks with like bilateral pneumonia with sepsis. So at one point had over 50% probability of death. I was like kind of thrust into direct caregiving through that experience at the time that I had achieved like the pinnacle of my career, where I'd been working my butt off since my early 20s. And by the time I was 35, I was running a $250 million investment fund, with me as like the kind of the main person that the investors had invested with. And then I had a team of people working with me. It was like extremely, extremely sudden. And it was like a tremendous amount of pressure where that work itself was very stressful. I was already working 60, 70 plus hours a week on that. And then I was thrust into these emergent situations, managing my wife's care of, oh, by the way, she's in a coma. You have to make all the medical decisions. And I'm like basically just living at the hospital for close to a month. And I'm like full sabbatical of like, I'm not doing work. And I'm hoping
does
my
everyone
team.
know? I know you're the head, but have you fully disclosed like all of these health issues?
No,
it's like, no, you don't.
No, I've like my team knows to an extent, but I'm not trying to scare them, because like this is all their livelihoods, so I don't want them to panic. Like I got it under control.
You've got a lot of pressure there because you just said this is their livelihoods and I'm the lead.
Yes, it's like there's a lot of responsibility because think about it like at that time, okay, like a lot of things in your life could collapse, right? Like you've built something that is paying a lot of people's salaries and you have to disappear for a month, which is like not easy to do in like a relatively smaller organization. So you have to like have responsibility for like, okay, you know, these people need to make sure they have a stability of like a way to earn a living. At the same time, your wife is in a situation where she cannot make medical decisions, and several medical decisions had to be made on treatment. And you are now suddenly, you know, at an age of 35, legally, you are the person deciding somebody else's medical fate, and you're trying to calculate and think about what to do. And like, I didn't come from like medical background. So I was like, well, if I do this and she survives, or this and she doesn't survive, it's like, can you imagine like the amount of stress, like that if you make the wrong call, or you make even the right call and it just goes the wrong way, you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life, you know? And that's like somebody else's life that you're accountable for, and they didn't give you any training. And the different doctors are like giving different recommendations. You know, I would ask many of them, what would you do? And, you know, one of them would say one thing, and then the person at night would say another thing. And I was like, I mean, it's like really, if I don't know if you guys have ever been in these situations, it's like extremely, extremely stressful because you don't know what the right call is.
Well, and I'll say this, I know that, you know, Jason, most people know that Jason had head and neck cancer, but what they don't know is 10 years ago, he had back issues, and it was, do we have a back surgery that could basically impact him in a very different way permanently? And because he was 49 and or do we not? And so we went with 3 opinions because we thought 3, there's a reason boards have odd numbers. He made the decision based on, well, what did 2 out of the 3 say? 66% decided that this was the way to go. I'm gonna pause this for a second and take one more break, and then we're gonna keep on going. So we'll be right back.
CareForward is a technology platform that connects volunteers with seniors, the disabled, and those with chronic or complex health conditions, offering support like transportation, home visits, and more. Details online at careforward.io.
All right, everybody, we are back here with Neal Shah, and we're talking about decisions that can alter someone else's life that you have to live with the rest of your life, basically. Your wife has had multiple health issues. She's been in the hospital. And tell me, we know that you're really you're sharing a little bit at work, but not a whole lot because you don't want to scare anybody. Tell me how you move through this situation, what it teaches you, but also what you do with it. Tell me about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think, I moved through it, I think kind of like best I could, one step at a time at the moment of like, how do you manage and navigate the care? But like ultimately I ended up taking like sabbatical, then going back to work, then sabbatical, going back to work, and like ultimately just made a very difficult decision to kind of like wind down the fund because I felt like I could not responsibly continue the work. And that was like a very, very difficult, drawn out decision. You know, it was almost like admitting defeat. You know, after like I've worked that hard to get to kind of like pinnacle of my career and have earned the respect of a lot of like friends, colleagues, people I've known, you know, for a couple of decades, to then just like make the difficult decision to walk away was like very isolating and very sad. But I thought that it would have a big impact on like my wife's health outcome because it was like touch and go for a while on what would happen. And yeah, I think that the other kind of some of the other things like I learned during the process was like it was very isolating, like as a middle-aged, like not even middle-aged, I guess mid-30s man in New York City, there was not a lot of I'd say not in a bad way, but there wasn't as much empathy as I would have expected. And I think it's because of like the way society is. A lot of people I found, a lot of like young or men in their 30s or 40s kind of maybe have a more I don't know what the right word is, but more old school way of thinking about care that, okay, that, oh, why are you doing that? You know, why isn't somebody else doing that? So I think they have like...
Nobody asked you where are her parents at? Why aren't her parents helping you with this?
Yeah, I think some, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like people could say, is there another woman that you could find to
stuff like that, you know?
It sounds sexist, but it's really true because nobody questioned me when I'm caring for Jason. But if Jason were caring for me, they'd be like, oh, and I know JJ would probably be, well, she's going to step in either way. She stepped in either way. But but should we find it's almost like, should we find a woman?
Yeah, I think it's like, that kind of stuff is like maybe said like like they wouldn't say that exactly to my face that way, but it's implied. It's implied. And then I think the other thing that was kind of interesting also is like from a stage of life perspective, typically at that stage, okay, for 35, like a lot of our friends, and this is where I would say, give them the grace that maybe it's not their fault. Many of them are at a phase in their life where a lot of my friends had also recently gotten married, or maybe had been married for a few years. Many of them were having children, and we had gotten married. We did not have children at that time. And so while their life is kind of in this trajectory of, hey, I'm entering a new phase of life, of like, I'm going from like, so many of my male friends were like single male, to then marriage, to then kids. And I'm the one at the group dinner talking about, oh, my wife's really sick. Oh, yeah, this treatment didn't work. Oh, yeah, I'm making these decisions. It's almost like you become kind of like the Debbie Downer.
Oh my God, I almost said Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
I thought that's going to come across harsh, but it's true.
Yeah, it's a reality. You know, it's like, hey, I don't have anything fun to report. Somebody's like, oh, I just had a kid. Oh, man, I'm doing this thing. Oh, I'm doing this thing. I'm like, well, I've now walked away from my career, and things are not going well health-wise, and I'm super stressed out. So it's like, who wants to?
We want to hang out with Neal.
Not to blame him. Yeah, seriously. It's like, I could see that they're like, oh, hey, this sucks because all my positive stuff in the group of 5 or 6 people, it's like, okay, this person's only talking about the stress that they're having. So I'd say give people the benefit of the doubt. You could see why there's like a little bit of more of a distance. You know, while people are very empathetic and supportive, like tons of people sent us food, flowers, you know, visited, you know, and checked in on us, whatever. But there was still that like a little bit of unspoken thing of like, look, I'm at a phase in my life where things are looking up. I don't want to hear all this negative stuff all the time. And I get that. You know, I think this is a big thing in like human psychology of like, sometimes people just don't want to hear about bad things, even though that's a reality of everyone's life, whether it happens to you at 35 or 70 or 50 or anywhere in between. There's going to be difficult things that happen in your life. But many times people have like less appetite for, tolerating that. So yeah, I found it became like extremely isolating, extremely isolating. And especially when she had left her work, I had left my work, and there was just like illness and challenges to go through. It was like a very difficult and lonely time, for a while.
So let me ask you this. I thought you were going to lean in, Jay, for a second. I didn't want to step over top of you like I always do. Kind of thinking about, I appreciate the conversation that we just had about, you really gave people permission to be able to kind of step back. How much of that was your own stuff in saying, respectfully, and this is where it comes back to reluctant caregiver. I mean, truly, none of us want, let's be really clear. None of us want to be caregivers because we want our original role. You wanted to be a husband. You wanted to be a grandson. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that we don't want to do care, but we don't want to be put in that role because of what it really ultimately means. And there's a lot of loss of control, but you're given a lot of, like, you said out loud, probably what a lot of people think and they don't want to say out loud, but how much of that, are you sure you didn't put any of what your own, like, maybe I would feel this way, or I assume they're feeling this way and nobody ever said it? Do you know what I mean? How much of that you put on others to say, I'm going to pull myself back some because I don't think they want to hear it, because hell, I don't want to hear it. I mean, that's what I did. I had to,
good question.
I didn't think anybody would want to hear it because I'm depressing.
No, good question. Good question. I'll say this, actually, interestingly enough, one thing I discovered through the care journey, which I guess maybe is like counterintuitive. I actually like being a caregiver. You know, I like the act of giving care, which is like very surprising to me, because like up until that moment of life, I'd view myself as like just highly analytical person. Sometimes maybe not in tune with my emotions and stuff like that. But I like being a caregiver. You know, I like helping somebody, whether it's like a close family member or even just somebody not. I like the act of like helping somebody who's suffering or struggling. So the act of care I enjoyed. And I mean, that's saying that loosely. There were a lot of times of high stress, you know, but I like and find deep meaning in the work, whether it's within family or for someone else. But I also, like, I would say I'm attuned to other people's like feelings and kind of the way they're interacting. And I think that, like, I will talk about the stress of it and, hey, this is what happened. And I could just read the room that it was kind of like, no one would explicitly say to your face. Yeah. But it was like reading the room that, people just like have a limited tolerance of hearing about it when they're in a certain phase of life, you know? So I think it was like more like, I don't think people, but you're right. Like maybe it's me misreading it, but I could just tell that people would be a little bit more guarded of like, I think frankly, many of them would be like, I don't know what to say. You know, because I think many of them have gone through that experience, you know?
I think that's part of the issue. And I don't think, and not to imply it's one person's fault or the other. I think there is I think people are sensitive on both sides. I think people, and I think about my past experiences, like when I've come upon, like my aunt had cancer and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. And then, but as good Southerners, most people are like, oh, that's okay. No, it's not okay. You just start to say, thank you. Thank you for being sorry for me. Thank you for showing empathy towards me.
Yeah.
And I think but I do think you're right, because people are in different phases of their life and it's hard. And then they don't know what to say or don't know what to do.
Yes.
And I think that's consistent. And then as caregivers, we also have to give permission to, this is what I need from you. And there's a vulnerability that is different than you may have experienced, not you personally, but you listeners may have experienced. And it changes the dynamics of the relationship, because my husband lost a lot of friends during his journey. And I know that people that had supported our mom initially are not around. And so it changes relationships, and it is stress of care and the situation. And I think it's all the things. That's why it's so complicated. It's messy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to that point about changing relationships, I actually think that some of the things, what I realized, through this life journey is, and I'm not saying in a bad way, there's a lot of people who are around in like more of a fair weather relationship when it's like fun and happy and kind of just like things are good on the up and up. And then you realize like who's really in your corner when things go bad. And I kind of feel like, okay, I had a fortune of like maybe a life trajectory up until that point where it was just like fun and upwards, where like, and then you go through this big difficult phase in your life. And then it like makes you really realize like who's there through ups and downs. And I get it. It's like friends. Maybe the expectation is very different, but I think that was like really eye-opening to me, that you need the down to see who's really real and not just who's like, there for the good times.
Yeah.
Oh, I already can tell that's going to feel like a clip, Jay, because it's the truth. Who's going to be there for real? Who's going to be through thick and thin?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to just give permission for people to exit your life. There will be people in my life, and then there are people not, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you just know maybe, and not even in like, let's say in a no judgment way or judgment free, whatever you want to call it, then you just recognize that's what it is, that this person's nice, but this is just like fair weather friend. And sure, let's have fun, but no, deep down, can't count on, Yeah.
So Neal, I know that you're my neighbor basically. So tell me about, somehow you have transitioned. You left New York City. So tell me how all of this occurred, because you left your career very successful. And some people may say this man was crazy, first of all.
Why would he give up all that money? Because that's really what comes down. Like, he's successful. He's doing this. He's living a great life. Go ahead,
Tell me what exactly it is, because I love finance. Tell me what it is that this big finance guy is. Tell me how what all this meant to you and how you made this change in your life that fulfilled your mom's prophecy, basically.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I through my wife's care journey, so I initially like had to, because it was just, there's so much care to do, and things beeping. There's so much care, responsibility, and such a impact on the outcome that I was like, if I do the care myself, and I'm like there at all the oncology visits, I'm kind of like there thinking, researching, maybe there will be a better probability of beating the cancer. So, end up kind of like really just going all out and obsessing over it. Then, knock on wood, and part of that whole journey was just like kind of coming back home, getting care support from extended family. And then, actually, she had her final surgery here at Duke, and, then, after radiation, like was in remission, which was like awesome outcome after all these difficult years. And at that point, I left out of necessity of like the immediate, like emergent situation of like, have to leave because that'll impact the outcome. But then after, she had recovered, then I spent a lot of time like soul searching and thinking, okay, I could just go back into what I was doing, and, may not be able to pick it up exactly where I left it, but pretty quickly kind of get back there. Yeah. But I'll say fully, honestly, it was like eye-opening life experience in a way of like, it made me second guess what I had been doing with my life previously. Like, I have a lot of skills. I have like a very hard work ethic, and like I have like brain power that I can like dedicate to something. And then I'd realized like the initial reason for entering that industry was just because I came from like lower income background. I was like, okay, how can I just quickly make a bunch of money so I don't have to like worry about finances for myself or even for my parents, for their retirement. But then you realize like, what's the point beyond a certain point? There's no point. It's like, I'm not a very materially interested person. I don't have like big tastes or anything. I don't like to buy expensive things. So then it was like, what's the point? Just because you're in something, you're just kind of going down because of momentum, but like you're not. So I think when you have this traumatic experience, at least for me, it leads to a lot of like soul searching of like, one, you're face to face with your loved one's mortality, but you're also face to face and makes you think about your own mortality.
That's right.
If I were to die next year, what will I have spent my precious time on earth doing? I wouldn't at that point, I wouldn't have been proud of that. I would have been like, okay, cool, I did something, but that was like a really not best use of the talents and the energy that I have. So that was like really the catalyst of like, okay, that combined with, I've been in so many caregiver support groups and talked to so many people that are dealing with the situation. As bad as I felt for myself of having to walk away from a career, I was like, well, like a lot of people have it way, way worse, of like people have walked away from careers where they don't have a fallback, they don't have savings, they're taking care of their loved one, and then they're just going to be completely screwed on their own after that. So I think that the years of that journey and talking to so many people, just like, I think, it's like been like an awakening of like just how bad the system is. So it was like, after a lot of like thinking, it was like, okay, I want to like dedicate my life's work to fixing this to the best that I can. Of like, caregiving is very difficult. It's the system is so broken that I was like, okay, let me just like put my energy into that and just go.
Your level of empathy is just amazing, because you said you were in these groups, these caregiving groups, first of all, and you say, I see these people that had it worse than I did, and you think about that. But and
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would think that would be really hard, but I love that you're just like, I think I'll just tackle, an entire system.
Industry problem.
Just
naive. Let's put it naive.
We can do it together. We're going to.
So that is like, Neal, in another life, you were a social worker. I'm going to tell you, in another life, you were a social worker. And I think your mom saw at a young age that you had heart and a heart for other people. And it's symbolic, of course, you've got a heart on your.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You have a heart for other people and not just blood relatives. You definitely have. And that is not something that is necessarily born in everyone. And so you thought, I love that you said, I'm going to take this gift that I've been given, and which is in that skill set, and I'm going to do something different. Yeah. And so, and did that start? So what started first? Was it Caregiving? Because that's how I came to know you. What started first?
Yes. Yeah, that started kind of Caregiving. Like, it was like, I was like, what can I do given everything that I've seen and experienced myself and everything I'm seeing caregivers go through? So initially, I kind of went through like a lot of like ideas of like, okay, where is there the biggest impact you can make? I think you guys are right. Like there's a, looking back, there's like an amount of like naive optimism that I think sometimes is required, because don't get me wrong, it has not been easy. It is like,
it's never easy.
I got in and I realized it's broken for a reason. And like, I just underestimated how uphill of the battle it is. But sometimes if you don't have that naive optimism, you never get started, So, but I had kind of like this naive optimism of like, a series of challenges that I'd experienced, I'd seen other people experienced. But I think some of them being caregivers having a hard time getting a break. A lot of times the caregiver just needs an ability to somebody else to take the burden off them so that they can go do something for themselves, whether it's they have to go work for income or whether it's they have to take a break to just spend time on their own. I felt like that was like kind of, given that I didn't come from like a medical background, the quickest thing I could make an impact on was finding a way for caregivers to kind of get that help. And given that I'd navigated the entire care system myself, of like everything from like getting help through agencies, informally finding caregivers, actually had experience like even hiring students. Like I'd kind of gone through the whole thing, and I'd gone through a lot of people that I've met over the years in support groups, try every single thing possible. I'd kind of observed that the lived experience, that the best thing in the kind of underground economy of care was people already knew finding students, finding really most of the time it was like contacting your local nursing school's professor and finding students who are empathetic and want to do this work, and then managing it yourself. Like everybody knew, it's like a well-kept secret that is some of the best care, but it's a lot of manual work for you to do. And I think almost to the person in the, care economy, most people knew the hiring care through these agencies. I don't want to offend anyone. I appreciate people are doing these and running these businesses, but most people knew that the agency-based care was just like not great, but like they were like, that's the best I got. I don't have the time to manage all this myself. So that was like really kind of the inspiration of like starting Care AI. I was like, I think there's a way to help people solve this problem. And I think there's a way to do it both affordably and to do it in a high quality way, mainly because when you experience low quality care, you feel very guilty. Like if you go do your job because you left your mom, dad, spouse, whoever with kind of a subpar caregiver, you carry that guilt with you to your job and you think about it all day. And many people have to learn repressing mechanisms because you don't have a choice. I think that's like modern life we live in. But I think that has like a second order impact on the person. They know, they know, and they feel bad. They feel bad that I wish I could have done better, but what choice do I have? So I really wanted to fix that because I think that guilt has a lot of
guilt is also then the next step is isolation. And holding those feelings in, and we know the impact that holding in negative thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the impact on your body and your overall health and wellness that can have on you. Yes. And so I always say, I have to get the negative out. I can't hold that in and carry it, and it's too heavy, and you don't have to carry it. So you started Care Yaya, this is how I found you. And I thought it was really cool. And, but then you decided, no, I think I'll do some other things too. Cause not like that wasn't successful enough, but let's go ahead and let's go to the next level.
I know. Well, okay. So sorry. I totally glossed over what Care AI is. So basically, I started Care AI, which is like a social impact project, which was basically how do we connect people with great caregivers at like the most logically affordable rates. So we run completely for free. Like Care AI charges no fees, markups, anything like that. And initially it was just like funding it myself. And it was like, we built this technology system similar to like Uber or Airbnb or whatever you want to call it. And we said, if anyone is caring for a family member, you can go to the site and you will get wonderful healthcare students near you. So we started in our area in Raleigh-Durham. So at like Duke and UNC Chapel Hill and NC State. Yep. And, pre-med students, nursing students.
You were in a good place for it. Let's be clear.
Yes.
100%. UNC or North Carolina has, and Virginia is honestly another one, has a good college system that allows for you to pull interns and students that are in the healthcare track. So
agreed.
I think that's an important component to it. I think it'd be harder in some of your more rural states.
Yes, 100% agree. The South, a lot of the South has a disproportionate number of, college students, and also a disproportionate number of older adults. So, that was kind of like a really like realization. So we started that, and we've been now running Care AI for about 3 years. And it started from like a local Raleigh-Durham thing with like a couple hundred students at Duke and UNC to eventually got to like 1,000 to eventually, got to like 5,000. And now it's spread nationally. We have now, I think at last count, like 44,000 students across. We're at over 35 universities. It's like really cool. It's like
you did that little thing.
Yeah.
So
it's like it's awesome.
You did this little thing.
Yeah.
And
it's like blown up. And it's like really cool because like it's in most markets, it's the most affordable care option by like 30 to 40%. In areas like Boston, the local care companies are charging $42 to $45 an hour. Yeah. And, no offense to anyone, but most of the caregivers are not doing a great job in those situations because they're not getting paid most. That the interesting break in the care economy is that the caregiver does like 99.9% of the hard work, right? They're actually on the job doing it. The care matching organization, which would be the company, is doing like 1%, maybe at best, of the work, which is like upfront marketing and sales and administrative work. But the economic value that these companies are capturing is over half. So in Boston, the care company is charging 45 and capturing 25 to 30 of that, and then paying the care worker like teens on per hour. So that's why the care sucks. And that's why the family pays an arm and a leg. So what Care AI does is we will connect you with pre-med student at Harvard, nursing student at Tufts, whoever, kind of is available for $20 an hour. And then you pay and the student gets. And we fund the whole thing off grants and social impact funders. And that I think is like a big change in the care economy because the caregivers are super happy, motivated. They're getting paid reasonably well. The family is like able to afford a lot of care. So a lot of the people we serve could not afford care in a traditional way. And the impact is scaling now around the country with like a pretty lean team. And I think that's kind of like a cool, both sides win.
Well, and so I'm gonna stop us for a second because I know we're at the end of our time, and we're gonna end up going a little bit longer. So if folks want the extended version of this, definitely go to our website and you can grab the edition. So because we're gonna keep going a little bit longer. So the other, because again, if you don't know Care Yaya, and I know for our listeners on UK Health Radio, this is a United States based, but this is a concept that I'm sure Neal was like, oh, people, it's anywhere kind of idea. You can do this. And so I think my answer is be inspired. And so, because that's
we might expand to the UK. We have BBC is going to do a story on us. I'm doing an interview with BBC like next week. So
so
coming to the UK soon.
We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Oh, please. Are you kidding me? It's not even a question. I feel like I need to get you with a friend of mine. Aditya, if you're not listening to this, Aditya is about to be your friend, Neal. And so powerhouse 18-year-old. And so I want to go in and I want to spend the last handful of minutes that we have because you also, normally we don't promote like lots of things like this because we really talk about your experience, but what you've done with this is so different. And I think there's things that are such a give back. And again, your mother was right. But you have this book called Insured to Death, How Health Insurance Screws Over Americans, which cracks me up. I love that.
Right here.
I love that there's a gun on it because nothing says, oh, that's pretty dicey.
The denial letter has the shadow of a gun because that's what I think the insurance companies are doing. When they deny critical care, they are basically dooming you, and I think that's not, they've lost sight of their mission.
Well, and I think, so here's my question, because I know that you have, what is the next step? Because I know you're using AI and I know you had like ideas of like how to help other caregivers navigate. So let's talk about strategies to navigate the system effectively so you don't feel like respectfully you've been given a death sentence.
Yes. So I think that also is from lived experience in managing my wife's care for several years. There were so many critical things we were denied. Whether it's therapeutics, whether it's hospitalization, bills after that, whether it's surgery and surgery-related bills, these were things that were supposed to be covered by insurers. And I think that's a critical thing that's happening across America, that the health insurance companies are breaking the social contract. Now, whether or not, legal contracts, they can all play games and figure out ways around it, but they're breaking the social contract that if you have health insurance and you've been paying into it for 10, 15, 20 years, and then something bad happens to you, that is the time you need the funding, not you need extra stress because things are being denied. So I experienced this significantly during my wife's multi-years cancer care, and I was very frustrated. I was in a fortunate enough position where I could just punt on the frustration and pay everything out of savings and deal with the bills later. But not everyone is in that situation.
That's right.
And even in that situation, it created a tremendous amount of stress when I, should be focusing on care and when she should be fighting illness. There were various times during her own chemotherapy that she was spending hours and hours on the phone fighting bills. And I think that's like insane, and I've observed so many people dealing with this. And I think that what pissed me off is that many people are dealing with this who don't have savings. And then they are foregoing critically needed care, which is then making their health worse. So I observed this, but I thought, okay, this is just happening to this group of people that I know. But then over time in running Care, I see this is happening to a ton of older people, as Medicare Advantage is now the prevailing way that most people are getting Medicare, and it's a private for-profit plans. And so many family caregivers are drowning in denials by MA plans for their mom or dad. So I wrote the book to kind of research and bring awareness to it, but I also used a lot of our team's time and energy to build AI tools to help people fight back. Because what I observed is when people get claims denied, 99% of people don't fight back. They're intimidated. They don't know how to do research and all that. But of the 1% that do bother to fight back, half the time you win. So I was like, well, the critical problem is we need to make it easier for people to fight back, to create well-structured appeals, with medical evidence. So we built an AI system where people can upload their coverage policy, their denial letter, their health records, and it will then go ping a bunch of research journals and billing code databases and figure out any fixes to why, almost like having a lawyer and a doctor in your court spending 10 hours on your case, but do it in 2 minutes and for free. And that was really the whole inspiration. And we were like, how can we help people fight this broken system? And pleased to say we've been now running it for a few months and over 70% of people are winning, which is amazing. And we've gotten some impact funding to kind of accelerate, which we'll be announcing over the next couple of weeks. But it's it's a free tool for everyone to use. And, anyone can go to the site.
Where can you find the tool?
Sure. It's called counterforcehealth.org. So, COUNTER forcehealth.org. And you can just kind of set up a free account and, use it as much as you like. The most pleasant surprise is clinics are using it. So it's not just patients that are pissed.
No,
I
I
think
can
a lot
see
of
clinicians being able to use it, practitioners who are trying to get
doctors, nurses, social workers, they are so sick of this health insurance system,
Well, and here's the thing though, Neal, is that we have to remember, because I mean, I've got my friends in the health plans. So, and I also know who those people are in the sense of they're human beings and they want what's well. But it seems interesting that you'd use AI to fight AI, because the health plans are using AI, are instituting and integrating AI into the decision-making process for claims. And then you get, and once you start getting denials, that's when you start getting peer-to-peers with like healthcare professionals, like a physician. And so but it's interesting that you've gone that direction, which it makes perfect sense, because, but if I'm a person, I'm going to ask this question, because we got to get into sister questions. We're way over our time.
Okay.
So, but I will say, if I'm a person, will my information that I upload remain secure, and will it be used? How does the machine learning, because people are going to be like, well, that's my protected health information. And how is that information used? Is it sold? I mean, and are people going to be able to back in and basically take all my money from my bank account?
No, great question. Yeah. So the information is fully secure. It's not sold to anyone. We run the whole thing off grants. An interesting kind of like way we've built the system for clinics and like full HIPAA compliance is that you get an option you can de-identify all the information on your machine. So that is scrubbed and then sent into the server without your name and any identifying patient information, or you can leave it in, because it then, if you de-identify it, creates the burden of you have to manually add it back in when you get the letter. Otherwise you don't. But it's fully at your option.
Wow.
And, from a clinic's perspective, the clinics have like full HIPAA compliance, where no information is transferred. And then for people who want like an even greater one, we're happy to like sign business associate agreements, to maintain HIPAA compliance and do it for hospitals. But we're helping, we kind of designed it with multiple tiers of if you're like just an individual patient, you can use it however you need. If you want to go for convenience versus like full data privacy, for clinics also. And then we're like designing a better system for rural hospitals, because believe it or not, rural hospitals are reaching out to us and they're like, I'm drowning in this stuff. So can you guys help? So I think there's a cool way, to your point about AI, I think it's like part of the premise of my book is that the insurers, you could use a charge word like weaponized, which I would prefer, but used AI, if you want to call it. The insurers used AI first and used it and abused it for years. And individual people, small clinics, rural hospitals have to do the return manually. So if one person is taking 1 second algorithm to deny something and you have to take 8 hours of research to write back, most people just fatigued and give up. And as you see, insurance then will make a lot of profit off that. So I thought that you had to democratize access to these AI tools so that it can be kind of a fair fight.
Wow. This has been, I'm going to tell you, this has been the most interesting conversation. I'm going to give you one question, Jay, because you got one sister question.
Okay, first of all, thank you for making everything to the caregivers at no charge. We have a big heart for caregivers, and they don't have a lot of extra funds. First of all, that was my first thing.
I absolutely love that too, because we're all about free.
We're all about that. So question, one thing that big overwhelming goal that you want to see happen for the insurance?
What's the future? What does the future look like? What
that. Do you
for insurance or for healthcare in general?
For healthcare in general. What do you want to see?
Okay. Yeah. For healthcare in general, I think my maybe one overarching philosophical goal is the recognition of the family caregiver as the largest healthcare workforce in the country. That I think that people who are caregiving do not get the respect they deserve. Like they are doing literally they are the frontline doctors and nurses in millions of homes across America. That's partly why I wear scrubs, like whether it's to inspire the students or to inspire the family caregivers, that this is America's healthcare workforce. It's 63 million people by latest count from AARP, that they are doing American healthcare. And they're keeping not just the healthcare system afloat, but we, all of us, right? Like we are keeping the society afloat. And I think that caregivers would be behooved to be better supported. Think about how much money our healthcare system is $5 trillion economy. Like the amount of money we're paying for drugs, the amount of money we're paying to hospitals, the amount of money that the Medicare Advantage plans and health insurance plans are making in profit. And what are the family caregivers getting? Absolutely nothing. I think it's like unbelievable, like unfairness in the system that, if somebody in your family is sick, you don't get anything. They pay $32,000 a year to Biogen for this dementia drug. Why isn't $32,000 available to the family to decide, do I want to take the drug or do I want to pay for care, whether it's to pay for external care or the family member to get paid if they have to quit their job? So I think that a big overarching change would be like that the millions of people who are like the actual hidden healthcare workforce get the recognition and support they deserve and get like the financial support they deserve.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, like, we could just go on and on and on. And this has been so fantastic on a direct level, on sharing your personal story, as well as showing, how can you go and change a system. And I'm going to tell you, for those of you who are listening, if you feel overwhelmed and that you feel like, who am I? I'm one person. I can't do it. Neal just said, yes, you can. And there's more of you out there, and along with these sisters and Neal, and there's so many great people out there and who are really trying to make an impact. It's amazing when we all get together, because you really can make significant change. Neal, I'm going to ask you the absolute last question.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And this is the flippant question of the entire conversation, because we have been super serious.
Okay.
But I don't know when you have free time, because I feel like, oh, look, Neal works more than me. But in your free time, what do you do just for you? What is your guilty pleasure? What's the thing you do for you?
I love to read. I know that sounds cheesy, but I love to read random stuff. I love to read books about all kinds of like neuroscience of like how the brain works. Where is consciousness? I love to read a lot of like philosophy books. I love to read a lot about ancient history, kind of what were cultures like in the past. I love to read any kind of random. Yeah. So if you guys have any book recommendations, let me know.
Oh,
but that's my kind of like guilty pleasure. Is like,
he's a sponge.
You are a sponge. Yeah, I'm going to send you some book recommendations from the psych side, but it's all neuroscience. And so I think it's things that it's really about relationship and connection, and how do we come more together. And you're really demonstrating how you can make technology work to help humankind. And so I love that. I love that. So Jay, you want to close us out?
Neal, thank you guys so much. And everybody else, all our listeners, until we confess again, we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.